All right, guys, what's going on? Levi Trumbull reporting, and today we have grand and very big breaking news that we need to share with the audience. In my hand right here is a copy of a lawsuit filed in the Washington Circuit Court for Washington County, Maryland. Now, we are going to get into this complaint. We are going to get into this lawsuit and the allegations within this lawsuit in question. It's about 19 pages long, but before we get into the allegations surrounding today's breaking news with the filing of this new lawsuit, before we do that, I just want to quickly hit the rewind button for those of you who are new to this channel or for those who are new to this situation. I want to just hit the rewind button just briefly to let the newbies know what's going on here. So if you have been following this channel, then you know one of the stories that we have covered for the greatest amount of time involves a restaurant in Washington County, Maryland, specifically in Boonesboro, Maryland. The name of this restaurant was Dan's Restaurant and Taphouse. And in 2022, a gentleman who frequented the restaurant, he's also a local businessman in Washington County, he filed a lawsuit against Dan's Restaurant and Taphouse for discrimination. He claimed that Dan's Restaurant and Taphouse kicked him out of this restaurant and this bar because he was, quote, an old white man. If you're familiar with this channel, you're probably familiar with this story. I'm probably not saying anything that is new to those who are familiar with this channel. You will remember that after he filed this lawsuit, he amended the complaint. He also sued the general manager of Dan's Restaurant and Taphouse. The general manager was allegedly the one who made these remarks to the friend of the gentleman who sued. So how it went down was there was a gentleman in the restaurant and he was accompanied by a local circuit court judge. The guy got into a dispute over, not really a dispute, but he was sort of not happy with how long it was taking his order to arrive. The order ultimately came, and when it came, he left, and the guy's friend who stayed behind was confronted by this general manager of Dan's Restaurant and Taphouse, this guy named Mike Skinner, who told the friend of the plaintiff that, hey, you tell your friend that he's not welcome in this restaurant anymore and that we are kicking him out. The friend and the judge told this general manager, no, I'm not doing that. I don't work for you. And Mike Skinner, in that case, who was the general manager, who is now a defendant in that lawsuit as well, told the judge, okay, you're banned too. You are barred from this establishment as well. You old men act like you old white men act like you own everything. Get the F out of here. And threw both of them out. There was body camera footage of portions of that, but not the actual portion where it is alleged that those words were exchanged.
What happened?
Nothing happened.
Now that we can hear each other?
No, nothing happened.
Okay.
I don't know.
Do you have any ID on you, sir?
I do.
What happened?
Nothing.
Well, they call us saying you're being rude or something like that.
No, I mean, I was sitting there, another guy was rude, and they said, hey, you go tell your friend he was being rude. I'm like, I was just sitting here having a beer. So, I don't mind being kicked out in bed.
So, again, we brought you the fact that this plaintiff, this local businessman, sued Dan's Restaurant. He amended that complaint to not only sue Dan's Restaurant, but to sue the general manager of the restaurant, Mike Skinner. He also sued the owners, Dan and Charlotte Oftenbrink. He also sued one of the staff members, Alexander Thagard, who made statements online as well. I have brought you the fact that not only was that lawsuit filed in state court, but it was also filed in federal court as well. And on the federal jurisdiction level, there was a motion to dismiss filed, and the plaintiff survived that motion to dismiss. So all in all, the plaintiff in this case has had some success. Now, Dan's Restaurant and Taphouse, as well as some of the defendants in that case, before we get to this, they also tried to file for bankruptcy. That's happened as well. But the plaintiff has also survived bankruptcy proceedings against Dan's Restaurant and some defendants. So all in all, the Plaintiff, the local businessman out of Washington County who claims that he was thrown out improperly and discriminated against, it seems so far he has been able to substantiate a claim, a working claim, not only in the state level, but in the federal level as well, and has survived motion to dismisses and has survived bankruptcy proceedings. And that's important context to bring you the news that I'm going to bring you right now. So now, with all that said, let's get to the actual breaking news for today. So the plaintiff, that local businessman who claims he was discriminated against, who so far has successfully been litigating this case, has just now filed another lawsuit as it relates to this incident, as it relates to a public relations company that he alleges was hired by Dan's Restaurant and Taphouse to post allegedly defamatory things about him on social media. So let's get into this breaking news of the day and this lawsuit as well. This lawsuit that was filed just about a week ago. So the case title of this situation is Neil Glesner versus Len Foxwell of Tread Avon Strategies, LLC. Now, who Len Foxwell is he actually, this gentleman used to be a top aide to Maryland Comptroller Peter Franchot, but ultimately he resigned. It seems like there was a little bit of a scandal back in 2020, and this Len Foxwell gentleman ended up resigning as an aide to Maryland's Comptroller Peter Franchot. So yeah, he was out of Annapolis. He worked with this guy. He was in, he was in high-ranking political positions, but now he no longer does that, and he has a public relations company that works in the field of representing people who find themselves in a public relations catastrophe, such as the one that Dan's Restaurant and Taphouse found themselves in. So this Len Foxwell and Tread Avon Strategies were working on behalf of Dan's Restaurant and Taphouse to protect their PR. And that's sort of where this complaint kicks off. That is sort of how Len Foxwell and this business Tread Avon Strategies seem to have found themselves in hot water. So with that being said, let's get into some of the matters in this complaint. Following an incident in which a local restaurant in Boonesboro, Maryland, banned Plaintiff for being an old white man, Plaintiff filed a lawsuit for violating Maryland's law and public policy against discrimination in places of public accommodation and defamation of character. So that gets into the backstory of the original lawsuits, which we just did in some depth. In the days that followed, in an effort to combat the negative publicity perceived by the restaurant, Chardan LLC, by and through its members, employees, and agents, began defaming Plaintiff online and elsewhere, falsely accusing Plaintiff of being abusive to Dan's staff every time he came in. The lawsuit continues. Dan's put on a full court press to smear Plaintiff by any means possible, persistently telling malicious lies about him. Plaintiff discovered during an April 7, 2023 deposition of the corporate designee of Chardan LLC, its member, Daniel Oftenbrink, testified that the restaurant hired defendant Len Foxwell of Tread Avon Strategies, LLC, to manage the restaurant's public relations concerning the lawsuit and the media coverage, both traditional and social. Defendants managed, cultivated, coordinated, strategized, executed, and publicized the false and defamatory statements described herein as a willingly hired agent as aforesaid. And then the complaint starts to go into the general allegations of what we've already talked about. The fact that the businessman, the local businessman, was barred from the restaurant by Mike Skinner, who was the general manager, who also found himself in the lawsuit. The lawsuit goes on to sort of talk about, what we've already talked about. The gentleman was upset about the fact that, the hamburger shouldn't take that long to make, and, how staff were reportedly irritated by this, and this led to a lot of bad blood, which ultimately led Mike Skinner to bar both the plaintiff and the plaintiff's friend from the establishment. Again, that plaintiff's friend turned out to be a circuit court judge in Washington County. And with that context in mind, it goes on to list some of the allegedly defamatory things that Len Foxwell and his business, Tread Avon Strategies LLC, what they were doing in conjunction with the Dan's Restaurant and Taphouse. So remember, the claim really is that the buy-in for this business is that Len Foxwell and Tread Avon Strategies took over the social media for Dan's Restaurant. They were in control of the postings, the things that were being written and the things that were being published about this plaintiff. So again, this is how he buys himself in to the lawsuit. So we'll take it back to the complaint in question. One of the things you might remember from that controversy is the fact that there was protests outside of Dan's Restaurant at that time. And the claim is that the defendants were making claims that the plaintiff in this case was organizing and/or attending protests outside of Dan's Restaurant, that he had sort of been responsible for organizing these things, and that is defamatory. He talks about how the plaintiff had nothing to do with organizing those protests, and then it gets into a direct quote, which I guess they say is defamatory, is when Tread Avon Strategies through Dan's Restaurant Facebook put out the following statement. Quote, "It's pathetic when a man like Neil Glesner abuses the court system in an effort to bully and harass a woman-owned business. It's worse when he refuses to stand up and take accountability for his actions. Don't worry, Neil. Everyone, and I mean everyone, is giving you the proper credit for whatever happens this weekend. Everyone. And speaking of everyone, I hope to see everyone this weekend when the Dan's team will be serving up good drinks for a good cause. Enjoy a, quote, Neil's Cranberry Wine and a Big Sean's Mudslinger and our favorite, the Banana Moon Pie." So they claim that's defamatory. Another quote they claim is defamatory is in February 2023, when Dan's gave a statement to the Herald Mail, they said, "Mr. Glesner was asked to leave our restaurant due to repeated occurrences of disruptive behavior against members of our team. Nothing more, nothing less. The lawsuit filed by Mr. Glesner is frivolous and his accusations are beyond preposterous. We simply will not accept disruptive behavior that diminishes the experiences for our guests or team members. It was on the basis of such behavior that the gentleman referenced in the lawsuit was asked to leave the restaurant." Moving forward, it talks about how in coordination with Tread Avon Strategies, Mike Skinner, the general manager, was on Reddit posting, "These guys frequented our establishment and were always abusive and nasty toward the staff." And Mike Skinner wrote, "Two men were asked to stop coming to our establishment due to a long history of abusing our staff." It talks about how the plaintiff believes those statements are untrue. And then it also talks about how in conjunction with this public relations company, Alexander Thacker put on Reddit, "These men were removed from the bar because they have repeatedly berated and mistreated our staff over a span of at least a year or two." And then he also put his life was in danger, all because one man couldn't accept that his actions have consequences, which I guess they write, falsely attributing alleged threats to him as being caused by the plaintiff and falsely claiming that, quote, this is by Alexander Thaggart, that the plaintiff is a vile human being. Now, the complaint ends with 2 counts that are being alleged against the defendant and this defendant's company. The first count is for defamation of character. Those are for some of the statements that I just read you right there. The fact that he overtook the Dan's Restaurant and Taphouse social media and were posting these things about the plaintiff, and then the second count is conspiracy, a conspiracy to commit defamation. So you have a defamation count, and then you have a conspiracy to commit defamation as well. So if you guys are keeping score at home, that is the third lawsuit to be filed as it relates to the Dan's Restaurant and Tap House situation. You have lawsuits. One lawsuit in a state court that's against Dan's Restaurant and Tap House, the two owners, the general manager Mike Skinner and Alexander Thagard, all people who have involvement, and then a similar one in the federal court, and now a third one which is in a state court. This time, you have this plaintiff suing Len Foxwell, this former top aide to Peter Francho, and again, who owns this public relations company. Now he is being sued based on what are alleged as nefarious misconduct on his behalf. So that is where we are at on this situation, guys. So again, a lot of moving parts to this situation. We will reach out to the defendant in question to see if he has any commentary, if he has any position on the matter. But nonetheless, we will keep you guys abreast of the situation and give you guys developments when we do get them. So guys, that is all we have for the moment. This lawsuit is on the books, and I don't believe at this point this defendant has even been served a copy of this complaint yet, and it will be interesting to see where it goes. So with that, Levi Trumbull reporting in Frederick County, Maryland, and we'll catch you soon.